Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling something huge, the Philippine impeachment process. It's powerful, it's almost always controversial, and let's be honest, it's pretty misunderstood. So let's get right into it.
To really get impeachment, you have to start right here. This single sentence from the Constitution is the whole foundation. Public office is a public trust. It sounds simple, but it's a huge deal. It means that the people in power, they're not rulers. They work for us, and they have to answer to us. That's the core idea.
Okay, so what is impeachment really? First off, let's be clear about what it's not. It is not a criminal trial. No one's going to jail because of an impeachment. The whole point is to figure out one thing. Is this high-ranking official still fit to hold their job? The only penalty is getting kicked out of office and maybe being banned from holding another one. It's a political process, through and through, focused on whether that public trust has been broken.
All right, so who can actually get impeached? Well, you can't just impeach anyone. The Constitution has a very, very specific list. We're talking about the president, the vice president, the justices of the Supreme Court, basically the highest officials in the land. It's an exclusive club, and that's by design. The idea is to protect their jobs from politics, but still have this ultimate emergency brake if things go really wrong.
Okay, we've covered the who. Now let's get into the what for. What kind of offenses are we talking about that could actually kick off this whole process?
Now, these are not small things. The list of grounds is pretty serious stuff. You've got the obvious ones, right? Treason, bribery, graft, and corruption. But then you have these two that are, well, a lot broader and often the center of debate. Culpable violation of the Constitution and betrayal of public trust. What do those mean? Well, that's often the million-dollar question. But the point is, we're not talking about simple slip-ups here. These are supposed to be fundamental, serious breaks of that trust we mentioned.
Okay, so you have an official and you have a potential offense. How does this thing actually get started? This is where it gets really interesting, because what the rulebook says and what happens in the real world of politics, well, they can be two very different things.
First up, there's a really important rule meant to keep things stable. It's a one-year ban. Basically, you can only try to impeach the same official once a year. The whole point was to stop people from just filing complaint after complaint to harass an official and paralyze the government. Sounds straightforward, right? But there's a catch.
And that catch is all about one little word: initiate. When does that one-year clock actually start ticking? Does it begin the moment someone files a piece of paper, or does it only start when the House of Representatives officially takes it up and refers it to a committee? This isn't just a nerdy legal question. The answer to this has literally determined the fate of past impeachment attempts.
And we've seen this play out in the Supreme Court. Just look at these cases. In the Gutierrez case, the court said initiation is a two-step process. You have to file the complaint, and it has to be referred to the Justice Committee. But then you look back at the cases against then-President Arroyo. What happened there? The House Committee took up one complaint and threw it out. The court then said, that's it, you've initiated the process. The one-year clock has started. And just like that, all the other complaints filed that same year were dead in the water. It just goes to show you, everything can hinge on how you define that single word.
All right, so let's say a complaint gets past that first hurdle. It's been initiated. Now it enters what I call the House Gauntlet. This is make or break time, and there are basically two very, very different ways this can play out.
So there's the by-the-book path. The complaint lands in the Committee on Justice. They check it out. Is it filed correctly? Does it even have any substance? If it passes that test, they hold hearings, they gather evidence, and then they vote. If they find probable cause, it goes to the entire House floor. And from there, you need a 1/3 vote of all the members to officially impeach the official and send the case over to the Senate. That's how it's supposed to work, step by step. But then there's reality. And reality has a fast track. The Constitution allows for a major shortcut. If you can get 1/3 of the entire House to sign on to the complaint from the get-go, you skip that whole committee process entirely. It goes straight to the Senate. That's exactly what happened with Chief Justice Corona. But there's a flip side to that political power. The committee can also be a brick wall, like we saw with the Arroyo cases. If the committee decides to kill a complaint early on, that's it. Game over. So what does this all tell us? It tells us that the House of Representatives holds all the cards at this stage. They, and they alone, decide what happens. They can hit the accelerator, they can slam on the brakes in committee, or they can just do nothing and let a complaint die on the vine. At the end of the day, the rules matter, but the political will of the House matters more. Okay, so let's imagine the stars align and a complaint makes it all the way through the House. What happens next? And what if the process gets hit by a curveball? Once the House impeaches, the action moves to the Senate. The senators basically become a jury, and this is the final boss battle. To convict and remove an official from office, you need a supermajority. A full 2/3 of all senators have to vote guilty. That is a very high bar to clear, and it's meant to be. Removing a top official is supposed to be a massive, serious undertaking, not just a simple majority vote.
But what if the trial never even finishes? We've seen that happen. Think back to President Joseph Estrada's trial. As it was going on, the political situation on the ground was exploding. Public pressure was immense, and before the Senate could even vote, he left the palace. The Supreme Court later looked at his actions, at his words, and said that was a resignation. And just like that, the trial was over. The political reality just completely swamped the formal legal process.
That whole episode raises a fascinating point about politics versus process. But a more recent case brought up an even more explosive question. Can you just skip impeachment altogether? Can you find another way to remove one of these top officials?
And this is where things got really controversial. In the case of Chief Justice Serino, the government didn't go the impeachment route. Instead, they used a legal tool called a quo warranto petition. It's a completely different track. Instead of arguing she did something wrong in office, this petition argued she was never legally qualified to be Chief Justice in the first place. And it was the Supreme Court, not the Senate, that decided the case. They agreed with the petition and removed her. It was a landmark move that essentially created a second parallel path to remove an official who could otherwise only be removed by impeachment.
So, we've walked through the rules, the political fights, the court battles. What's the big picture here? What have we learned about what impeachment in the Philippines really is? It all comes back to a fancy Latin term the Supreme Court loves to use, sui generis. It just means of its own kind. And that's the perfect description. Impeachment isn't just a legal proceeding, and it's not just a political power play. It's both. It's this unique, messy, fascinating hybrid of law and politics. And if you don't understand that it's both at the same time, you'll never really get how it works.
And the Supreme Court has warned about this time and time again. They've said, look, this process wasn't designed to be a political weapon. It's not supposed to be a shortcut to get rid of your rivals. It's supposed to be a constitutional check and balance, a tool for accountability when all else fails. It's meant to be a shield for the public, not a sword for politicians.
Which really leaves us with the final critical question. Is impeachment today a shield for the public, or has it become a sword for the powerful? The Constitution gives us the blueprint, the rules. But as we've seen again and again, the rules are just one part of the story. The true nature of this powerful process, well, that depends entirely on how it's wielded.